Welcome to our podcast where we delve into the world of engineering and construction with industry experts and leaders. I'm your host, Gareth Allen, and today we have a special episode focusing on the Engineering Construction Industry Association. Joining us is John Simpson, Managing Director of the ECIA, to shed light on the association's role and its impact on the UK engineering construction industry. Really excited about this one. John, good morning. Thank you very much for being patient this morning. Our tech issues have got in the way this morning with some sound issues, but hopefully this is going to come out loud and clear on our podcast. Thanks very much for your time today. Hope you're well.
All is well, Gareth, and thank you for inviting me.
No, I'm excited about this one, John. We obviously know each other a number of years across a couple of different businesses. So, what purpose of our Superiority podcast is to speak to industry leaders. Take tips from industry leaders about future leadership challenges, and learn a bit about you and certainly the organisations you've worked for and work with. So, having known you for a number of years and spoke to you in a couple of different businesses now, seems you've always been an MD of a business that's done well, for a number of years. Do you want to tell us a little bit about John Simpson and how you rose the ranks in the early years?
Yeah, sure. My pleasure, Gareth. So, I started out 16 years old, finishing school, wondering what to do. Coming from a very blue-collar background, my father was a scaffolder, and I decided that I would break ranks and go to college and do my A-levels. So, much to the dismay of my family, they were quite confused at that. I mean, why would you want an education after all? So I went off and did my A-levels, and as I said, not fully supported, certainly not financially by the father anyway. So he offered me a solution to that. He said, well, if you're going to do this, I'm not going to give you any money, but you can have a job. And at the time, he was a regional manager for Hotel.
Yes.
Currently at Altrad, one of the businesses that Altrad bought. So fabric maintenance at the time, and it was the beginning of multidiscipline contractors. So Hotel was very much an insulation company, and he was brought in with a number of others to actually convert that from an insulation company to a multidiscipline company, which at the time included things like asbestos abatement, scaffolding, painting, and then over time they added on a few other associated trades. So that's how I became to be in the industry, and it was only meant to be providing pocket money during my period of A-levels, and then I went on to do a degree. So that was how I started out in the industry, and then never really found my way back out.
Okay.
So finishing university, expecting to go off and be an actuary or do something very, very statistical, maths based. Thought that didn't sound so much fun, and ended up in a small privately owned new start scaffolding company, of which we set up and in the very early stages was called Project Scaffolding, which subsequently was bought out as well by a larger company. But I had some real fun doing that for 5 or 6 years, I think, in the beginning of my career, and learned a huge amount of things from a lot of older people who've been in the industry for a lifetime. So that really was, gold plated in terms of knowledge for me, and the ability to take that knowledge to the next level.
On that note, John, give me. I'm putting you on the spot because I know we've got some pre sort of we've prepped you on some questions to have a bit of time to thought, but we're going to try and catch you out on each and every thing. What one thing did you learn about that? Because that was sort of your first real role within leadership, with a commercial director role. Is there anything you've taken from that role that you still live by today?
Well, I mean, it taught me an abundance of things. A lot about contract law, a lot about cash, to be honest, and how businesses run, and it was a new start business, so it taught me that if you want to pay the wages at the end of the week, you need to be getting the cash in at the beginning of the week. And that was very much where we were. We were living hand to mouth. We were day by day counting the money coming in to ensure that we could pay the money out when the wage roll came, payroll came, and when the VAT was due, and all of these things, which I'm sure you're very well aware of, Gareth. So that I think was the primary thing that it really taught me, was that it was about cash control to become successful. Profit, we added up the profit at the end of the month. We pressed the button and thought, yeah, we've done okay. But the issue that we had even in those days was actually getting paid.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
as it was a small business, we had some great personal relationships on site, and I think everyone understood that it was a new company, it was a fresh thing, and without getting paid, we would be in trouble in a very short space of time. So yeah, I think I would have said was the primary thing that I learned. But there's so many things though, Gareth. You learn how to price work, you learn shortcuts, how to work out material, you work all manner of things that you come across which never leave you, and you
yeah,
carry them forward. And I think you carry them forward in your mind proudly as well. When
yeah,
you look back, and when I look back on that time, it was astonishing. At such
yeah,
a young age to be exposed to that level of business, but also that level of fun as well.
yeah.
The weekend entertaining and all these things.
Especially in a scaffolding business, I bet there's a few things you don't
Oh,
want to talk about on these podcasts, I'm sure, but would have been some
yeah,
interesting nights out.
yeah. Or the taxi picking you up to take you to the football on a Saturday, and then wondering what day you would return home were, yeah, worth a walk as well.
Yeah, yeah. Priceless. No, that's good. And then you say it was acquired. Is that where SGS came into the fold?
No, it wasn't actually. I think as all things become successful, I had a disagreement with the MD, so decided that it was time for me to go on to something maybe larger and more of a challenge. So I then joined a guy who was looking to semi-retire and wanted to step to one side. So I actually worked my way into that company and became the minority shareholder of that company.
Go on.
And we took that from around 3.5 million to about 14 million. So again,
Fantastic.
it was a really good time. I think admittedly it was boom time. 2005, 6, 7 were really good years in construction. We had a business which was about 55% construction based, so major construction at the time, working for big companies like BAM and Shepherds and the likes. And also about 45% was industrial, so doing things like tanks and the likes in the Humber area, some in Teesside and other parts of the world. So yeah, we took on some big projects and really tested ourselves there as well. And then I guess disappointingly, the end of 2007, 2008 crash came, which really affected construction across the whole of the UK. And many of the companies that we'd built reputations up with and honestly built up huge levels of credit with them, either couldn't pay, or there were a number that went into liquidation and other schemes that really challenged us. So we ended up taking that business back to a relatively small entity, and that was the point that I'd agreed that I would move on. So I went to join Interserve, which was at the time at FTSE 250 PLC. I'd gone to run the access and Scottish industrial business. So it was primarily scaffolding, but there was also some installation, pipe bending, welding, and that sort of activity. So that, again, a good time. Didn't spend a long time at Interserve, to be quite honest, and I think there was some challenges to be found there. And subsequently, I think Interserve ended up in quite a difficult spot laterally down the years after my exit. So had a call from a headhunter, as you do, and at the
And
time must
pesky
have been
headhunter. Nothing worse than pesky headhunters, is there?
pesky headhunter, and no, I guess normally ignored, but I must have been having a bad week, so the call, and ended up working at Harsco. So Harsco at the time was a publicly listed in the US business that was in some form of trouble, and the job there was to try to turn around the business. And I was took on to run the construction business at the time, as it was called, which was powered access, scaffolding, the access business, if you will, the SGB business, for those of you that know the industry, and forming and shoring, which now is termed Honeybeck. So a business that was in financially some difficult spots, and we worked through that for the first year and a half, got it back to somewhere close to where it needed to be, and then we were acquired by a venture capital company called CD&R, Clayton Dublin and Rice, and they bought Arsco and Brand at the same time, and that became what was or is currently known as Brand Software. So that was the early iterations of Brand Energy and Infrastructure Services, and then latterly Brand Software. So I spent about almost 11 years with Brand, and again, a great time. Spent some time, 5 years abroad, which really was a highlight of the career, and time with the family as well. To experience a different culture and a much larger business than I'd ever managed before. So yeah, really a very, very good time.
Well, I'm going to come on to what you're doing now, and it's slightly different to what you've been doing, but a couple of questions I certainly do have around that, and one I've just thought of, how different, you obviously when you were at Brand, you went out and led the Benelux region. How different is it to lead a business out in those countries to the UK? Is there different leadership qualities required out there? Is it what's it like?
I think there's a natural lack of acceptance, I would suggest, at the very early stages of somebody who is English coming in to run a Dutch and a Belgian company. They have a very strong culture, and they have a very strong industry as well. The big parts of Rotterdam are very industrialized, so they had a very long-standing history. Some challenges, I think, were apparent in that business, and that was why some of the changes were made. And initially, I was asked to go look at the business, as is traditional, I guess. And then after a week, I'd realised that looking at the business was probably going to end up being at least 2 or 3 years living there. So that was quite a shock, I guess, and it was at the same time a huge opportunity. But to go there and actually take a look at the business and offer advice, I guess isn't as accepted as making a commitment and moving there and moving the family there. And I think at that point, to answer your question, I think that's a point where you get some credibility and you get some level of acceptance, which again is all predicated on performance and how you engage with people and respect. All these things that I think as human beings we expect and in some cases we demand. So yeah, it was a hard time, and it was a hard time initially to understand the culture. Obviously, it's a very different language, and then you get to looking at Belgium, which is totally different again, in terms of a lack of understanding how an English person can turn up and not understand or speak multiple languages. And
challenging.
It's amazing to watch, especially the Belgians and the Dutch as well, who are amazing at speaking other languages, and it's like second nature, and it does become a very large embarrassing point.
Very ignorant. We are very ignorant, aren't we?
When you're struggling to understand or learn the very basics of their language. And then I was watching a colleague of mine at the time at an oil fair. I think you were probably there, in fact, Gareth. And he was stood talking to me in English. He turned to the left and he had a 5-minute conversation in French. He turned to the right and had a 5-minute conversation in German. And I thought, wow, that's it.
It's astonishing, a shame, isn't it? But just a shame.
And his mother tongue was Dutch. So it's really, really amazing when you see that. But it's a very hard act to follow. So challenging.
But I said, how fluent are you in? I mean, you must have been able to ask, "How can I order a beer, please?" I'm sure. But how fluent are you in them languages?
It actually ended up Dutch anyway. Ended up relatively passable, I would say. In my terminology. If you asked anybody I was working with at the time, they probably wouldn't agree.
Fair play. That leads nicely on, because obviously then you came back to the UK with Brand. And I know certainly when we sort of re-engaged, because you were part of one of 3 businesses in the consortium of PBS that then went and landed the sort of biggest project in the North Sea for 30 years, which caused ripples in the industry initially when it was announced. And, obviously it's been a real good project for those 3 businesses. One thing I wanted to ask you around that wasn't around the contract award, but is leadership during COVID, because when that project was awarded, it was pretty much days apart from Boris then locking down. Then we had things like quarantine, you had Chupi, you had all of them things going on. I mean, give us an insight at trying to lead a business through what was absolutely an unprecedented time that none of us in our lifetime has seen anything like that before.
Well, it was, I mean, I don't even know how to put it into words really, Gareth, but I'll certainly try. It was astonishingly difficult. And I think when you win a contract, any contract of any size, you always want to go and, express on the contract that you're going to perform, I guess initially, that you're going to deliver what you've promised, and ultimately that you're going to drive any change again, which has been promised during the negotiations and the contract negotiation stages. So all of that, I would suggest, is what you would wish to deliver. And then COVID comes, and we're trying to mobilize what was 7 major contracts into one. We're trying to onboard, again, 7 different contractors into one through the Chupi process. We had some level of Total people coming in as well, and we wanted to try to develop something which was very different for the North Sea. And again, I think as what you just said was, I think to my knowledge anyway, that the largest Chupi transfer in the North Sea in 30 years. So it was a huge step change, and something that we'd worked on for months, if not, I think well over a year, to get over the line. And then this huge barrier is put in place where we've got restricted numbers going offshore because of COVID rules out there. The double bunking and all these sort of things was reduced and changed. So we had skeleton crews in place. We had guys who had never met us sat at the phone. We had all manner of things which really caused a high level of concern for the employees that had just moved employment to a new employer. But ultimately, we had a new method of working that we wanted to implement, and we couldn't get out there to implement it. So it caused significant challenges, I think, which probably lasted for at least a year and a half into the contract, where we were playing catch up, where we were trying to meet people. We did certain things like meeting them at the heliport, just to try to create an interaction at the latter stages, where we should have been doing that at the very beginning, but we were just prohibited from doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was challenging, it was difficult, and actually it was just sad because a lot of the impetus that we built, and a lot of the real strong desire that we had to deliver something amazing just stops. So then you do naturally get further down the line, and we're having review meetings to say, well, you said you'd do this by then, and you haven't done it. Yeah, but we couldn't, and these are all the reasons why. So you end up, in a level of defense mode, which is never good. I think it was corrected, and I think that the contract did deliver, and I think there's a high level of satisfaction, certainly at the latter stages of the contract. So yeah, something that we're extremely proud of, extraordinarily proud of the team that worked on that, and yeah, what a change and what a contract to win.
No, fantastic achievement. So moving away from what you've done for a long time, tell us a little bit about your role now with the ECIA.
Yeah, so it's very different. The ECIA, for those of you that may or may not know what it is, the ECIA is the Engineering Construction Industry Association. So it's best known for its role in what is the National Agreement for Engineering Construction, the NECI, or the Blue Book. Lots of different terminology and acronyms it's known for. Well, I'm sure that those of you that are in the industry will be aware of that. So it's a member-led association that provides a collective voice for employers in the construction and engineering industry, and it provides a framework for the industry that encourages good industrial relations and safe practices on site, and really tries to set out to do the right thing, to give a good foundation for the industry.
So how different is it leading that type of business to a business where, let's be honest, it's P&L led, and let's get as many dollars in the bank at the end of each year. How different is it?
Extremely different. So it's run through board and council. So
Okay.
where you look at a commercial business, if you will, a commercial business has a level of hierarchy, however the culture works in that organization, and then there's a structure, there's a strategy, there's direction given, and generally followed, I would suggest. When you come into an association, it's almost flipped on its head. So what you're doing is you're representing the industry, you're representing the employers, and ultimately you're trying to do the right thing. But there's many moving parts in that, so changes can go through many different iterations before they actually become something which is given the go ahead through board and council and various different office bearers. So yeah, it's very different, Gareth, to answer the question. Sure.
And my understanding is supported by a statutory industry training board. So how does this board contribute to the development of skills within the engineering and construction industry?
So we work extremely closely with the ECITB and all of the good work that they do. So we obviously provide the framework, more of a framework as to how the guys and the ladies are paid, and then how we define the terminology, the grading within that. But then ultimately the training and all of the certification part is done by a separate body. So there's a very close interaction, and it's very, very closely knit and needs to continue to be that way.
Okay. And again, so my understanding is the ECIA members, they obviously work on engineering projects on a global scale. How has, I know you've got members globally, but how has your personal experience of working with American business, of European businesses, how does that come together nicely in the role?
Well, yeah, it's always there. I think more and more now, it's a global marketplace, so we see, examples of a major contract that we're just beginning under the NIKI in the London region is a foreign contractor, and we've seen this, I think, for many decades, where you have specialisms coming in from abroad, or you have global companies, as you're suggesting, who have a global reach. I think very different cultures within each organization, depending on where the parent company resides. But I think very much a UK understanding is being given by all, and is certainly portrayed on a daily basis, so that the communication and the work that they do is to a very high standard which you would expect in the UK.
Fair play. And in terms of sustainable practices, obviously sustainability, easy for me to say, is is a growing concern across numerous industries. How is the ECIA promoting and incorporating sustainable practices into the E&C sector?
So sustainability is everywhere, and as we see the world changing, it's becoming the talked about topic, and I think we are playing a very good part in that, where the ECIA supports the drive in a number of key ways. We're working with client groups to look at better planning and preparation. So, talking about sustainability, we're looking at how you actually increase productivity, how we can bring less people to the workplace, if you will, and increase productivity, which in itself, by definition, would be more sustainable. We're also looking at initiatives that are, one for one linked with productivity, which we absolutely need to do for a very different reason, which we come on to talk about. But we need to ensure that we'll carry out work in the most efficient and sustainable way possible.
Fair play. And you mentioned change. Obviously, adapting to change is it's ever evolving. The industry's constantly changing. Both the engineering and the construction industry are. How does the ECIA help its members adapt to, let's say, technological advancements, regulatory changes? How are you guys involved with that?
So the ECIA manages a number of forums, and these groups look at changes in law. We help communicate that, and we help with the learning of that by way of an update, which happens either monthly or quarterly with our member companies. The technology is providing benefits in many different ways as we continue to focus on this, and how we can help members communicate, how we can use better planning tools. There's a lot of real very beneficial planning tools out there, but the evolution of IT and AI and all these things which are coming very quickly towards us are really driving some key shifts in the industry. One of the key shifts that we have, and one of the real challenges that we have moving forward, is that we have a population which based on recent data is nowhere near big enough to deliver the work that we see ahead of us. We also have an aging workforce, which we need to very quickly look at how we deal with that. Technology and all of these new mythologies of how we can plan the work, I think, are imperative to ensure that we can try to backfill some of the challenges that we have in terms of numbers in the industry, key skills shortages, and ultimately how we use the people that we have to the best of our ability.
And not a question we've preempted on this, but are your members hearing this and saying, so are they forthcoming in terms of investing in up and coming talent in the future generation? Because for years, even in the oil and gas industry, we've known there's a skill shortage. For the offshore trades guys, every summer, every client we speak to, for example, is we're going to be short, and it just seems to be getting a smaller talent pool every year. But then on the flip side, the operators don't have enough. There's not enough spaces on beds to get X amount of green hands through every single year. So what are the members in the engineering and construction world doing around trying to potentially look at them skill shortages? What are they seeing and doing and saying this is how we might attack fixing this?
Well, I mean, firstly, you're absolutely correct, Gareth. It's a problem that has been decades in the making. And be it offshore because of bed spaces, or be it onshore because we just haven't invested, or we haven't had, the future workload or the geographical workload, or whatever reasons that may have happened. There's also been, I think, some governmental strategies that haven't supported bringing people in the industry. And I also believe, I mean, my personal view is, I think there's a societal shift as well. When I talk to my own children about what they want to do with their lives, they don't go back and say, I want to be an insulator, or I want to work offshore, or I want to work away. And in managing the businesses that I've managed in the last 20 odd years, you also see a change in the behaviours of the people as well, who are wanting to be home more, wanting to spend time with the children, not willing to work away as much, wanting different leave cycles. So I think we as a population of people have evolved, and we want better things, or we want to be with our families more. And I think all of this plays into this big challenge that we're facing. But to answer the questions, what has been done and what needs to be done. Well, I think in the past we can look back and say, we should have done this and we should have done that. And I'm sure that there's a whole list of things that we could make that we should have done. But I think there's little point in really going over what we should have done.
Yeah.
I think what we can do moving forward, and again, we're working with quite a number of different bodies on this, is we need to look at, firstly, how do we find people that want to enter the industry. I think to do that, things like what you're doing here are very interesting, to get the name out there, to really try to sell the industry. I think part of the challenge when I talk about the industry anyway to younger people who've had no exposure to it, is it's not really known.
Yeah.
Unless they have a family connection or a connection through friends, it's not really known as a profession, if you will. If you talk to someone at school, they may well say, well, I want to be in technology, or I want to be in a profession like a doctor, or or an engineer, or whatever. But I think when to distill it to a lower level and really understand what we do, I think there's a part of there's a piece of work that we have to take on to really try to communicate what that is, what this industry does, and ultimately how much that you can earn in it as well. I think is something that we shouldn't be shy of sharing, because you can have a great life, great lifestyle out of this industry. But I think some of the challenges that we face is, a lot of it is based outside. We have a long history in offshore work as well, you and I, and that's a different lifestyle. That's a lifestyle choice that you're taking. It's not just a job that you leave on a morning and you come back on a night. It's a job where you leave, you travel a long way, you get on a helicopter, you're there for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, and then you're running a rotation, likely of a similar number. But it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
Equally, the opportunities that this industry can provide, include working abroad, working offshore, working onshore, nuclear, petrochemical. It's a huge and very varied industry. But I think a big part of what we have to do is actually communicate that and communicate it effectively, and try to work maybe with some of the educational bodies as well to sell what we have as something very positive to young people. We have to change what we're doing. And I think that there's Brexit as well, that we shouldn't maybe forget. A lot of the reliance that we had on very skilled and very qualified foreign labour, the ease of transfer of these people has been removed. That has caused part of this challenge as well that we face. So I don't know if that answers the question or whether.
No, it does actually, and it's interesting you mentioned about the guys not seeing it necessarily as a career or an exciting opportunity. I know, obviously, I'm from the northeast, and a lot of my personal friends work offshore and have done for years. But they went offshore when they were 19 and 20 because their dad used to work offshore, and they'd get them offshore, or their uncle or their brother worked off. And obviously, probably rightly so now, with quality and health and safety, that can't just happen now. You've got to go through the certification and wait for that opportunity. And it's a different era, isn't it? And who knows where we'll be in 10 years' time with things like AI and stuff replacing people in certain roles. How limited will these opportunities be? I want to flip the question. I've got 2 more questions for you, possibly a third one. But obviously, they're the challenges you see, and we hear that and see that in every day. But in a more positive light, what are the opportunities you see then?
Well, I think there's some real opportunities in programming and planning, definitely. So, whether we're doing that with people or whether we're doing that with technology, with AI, and there's all manner of things that are coming through, which I think will really help in terms of work pack preparation, breaking down scopes of work, communicating scopes of work, and really delivering them in the right order, if you will, to ensure that we can build things more effectively than we have done maybe in the past. So I think, to chunk it out, technology is definitely something that will help us, and I think we do need that as well. I think the fact that there is certainly challenges in supply and demand, it's definitely pushing up the prices or the earning potential of the people in this industry. I think that in itself provides an opportunity where it becomes very attractive to work in this industry financially. So for those that are driven in that way, then I think it become, if we communicate it again in the right way, then I think that alone increases the attractiveness of what we have as an industry. I guess the whole piece around communication, I don't think we've done it very well. So I think the real mythology here could be, with better communication, it provides a pool of people which then can help resolve these problems just by doing something that we haven't really done very well before. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do better. There's a lot of things that really will add significant value. But there are some challenges, and I try not to talk just about the challenges, but there's some positives as well. But they are the significant challenges that we are facing.
Superb. Well, I really enjoy it. I've got 3 final questions. First one is, how's the farm coming along? So I know you're in your spare time, whatever spare time you've got, apart from being a dad and the MD of ECIA. How's your farm coming along?
Well, yeah, it's going very well. It was one of those things where you live and you work abroad and you do all these things and you think, do you know what? It'd be a really, really good idea to one day buy a little farm. And maybe a farm's an over exaggeration in terminology. So it's 19 acres of grass with a house in the middle. But it was one of those things where I thought, you know what? I really, really want to do that. And then I had the opportunity and I did it. And I think I must have wished I didn't about 100 times. But now we have.
It sounds like you've got peace out there, if nothing else.
Oh, it's idyllic. But yeah, it took us a long time to get it livable. But now we're there, and yeah, it's really nice, beautiful. Thanks for asking.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So we want to finish on, I have two questions. We want to finish on leadership. So my little girl is 8. She's going to rule the world. I can tell you that already by the way she's going on. She acts 28. But for our let's say our up and coming audience that's listening out there today and in the future, what advice do you have for aspiring leaders? What can they do to stand out?
I think the first thing you've got to do is do it because you want to. And I think if you get up every morning and you're doing something that you want to do, I think you naturally will do it better. So I think the first and foremost thing is choose something that you want to do. And if you want to do it, then you'll do it well and you'll do it with passion. Once you're doing something that you want to do, I think that the natural leadership part will fall through. So you progress through. If we're talking about business here, which I think we are, then if you're in an industry that you love and you are naturally working hard because you want to, because you're gleaming great enjoyment from it, then that naturally leads on to progression, and you will very quickly end up in a leadership role. And I think with that, then you can share your experiences. You can really take great pride in seeing how other people around you grow and develop, and ultimately create a space, create a culture that is enjoyable and people want to be a part of. So for me, I mean, I that's what I took, still take, but certainly when I was leading larger teams, took great pride in creating a culture and I guess a safe zone where everyone could come operate at their best level, make mistakes and not be penalised for them, and make them better and stronger people.
Superb advice. I love that. And I'm pinching this idea off Stephen Bartlett's podcast. So what he closes on his podcast with, and I haven't given you a chance to think about this, is I'd like you to give me a question that I'm going to ask my next podcast guest, and you will have no idea who that is at this stage. So I've really thrown you under a bus with that. Give me a killer question that I can get that person with.
A killer question, I would say, when Gareth asked you to do a podcast, why did you say yes?
Love that. Love that. Yeah. Fantastic. I've got to come back with you. I do have another question, John. Why did you say yes?
You caught me in a weak moment.
You were sick of the sight of the grass in the farm. Yeah, I'll do something. Keep yourself busy. But John,
it's a real pleasure, Gareth. I think, as I said, I think we have an obligation to this industry. It's an industry that I think we both love. And, one of the main objectives we have to do is make it sustainable. And the sustainability of the industry is in part now making sure that we can do the work. We've got to find some people. I think in doing things like this, it's extremely positive. It's a great industry to join. And I think we should be sharing that message.
No, well, I think that's perfectly summarised. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, John, and congratulations on what's been an excellent career. You give us some wonderful tips and advice there, and I'm really excited to get this one out to our audience. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people intrigued to listen here. Have a great day. Thank you very much for your time, and let's have a fantastic 2024, John. Stay safe.
You too. All the best. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye now. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed listening to our story. Remember, our community is what makes this podcast thrive, so don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's sharing your thoughts on today's topic, suggesting future topics, or just saying hello. We'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, leave us a review. It goes a long way in helping us grow. Thanks again for being part of our community. We'll catch you on the next episode.